This week on Back to the Movies, we're talking Hot Fuzz.
Nice one, Doris.
Nothing like a bit of girl on girl.
We're going back to the movies. 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 Hell.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Back to the Movies. I'm your host, Ben, and with me, as always, is my co-host,
Nat McGee. Hi, Ben.
Hi, Nat.
How are you?
I'm doing so good. How are you?
I'm okay.
Great. What are we doing?
You know, the chemistry is just electrifying. I gotta tell you.
I was just saying hi. That's all. No biggie. You're doing okay? I remember hearing that you had a little migraine today. I'm sorry to hear that. You doing better?
I did, yes. Yeah. You know, I mean, I'm getting by.
Okay. Was it from watching Hot Fuzz?
That movie is sort of migraine-inducing, but no, it actually happened before that.
Oh, so you watched Hot Fuzz after having a migraine? I feel like you shouldn't be allowed to do that for like a month.
I agree, but unfortunately, we were recording a podcast.
Oh my God. Do you have any migraine triggers? Like, does it, what brings it on?
Dehydration, diffused light, certainly caffeine imbalances. This is really good. I'm so glad that we're opening this door to our listeners.
Barrett, are you laughing at Ben's migraine? By the way, welcome everyone to Back to the Movies. I'm Nat, and Ben is the guy with the migraine, and we have a special guest for this week's episode on Hot Fuzz, and it's Barrett, the guy who's laughing at Ben's migraine.
I'm laughing. Hello, everyone. I'm laughing because he said dehydration and diffused lighting, which are like two things that could like be very easily avoided. It's just like you're not drinking enough water on purpose, or I don't get the diffused. I don't even think I get the diffused lighting.
Like a lightly overcast sky. You get light bouncing all over the place. My eyes really have a hard time.
Do you get migraines when it's partly cloudy? Is that what it, or I don't get it?
More like, more overcast though. Partly cloudy is okay. Light and shadow is fine. It's like,
wow.
Imagine like when you get that really light overcast sky when it's like someone put a scrim over the sun. That fucks
so
me up.
What you're saying is that if you went to England where Hot Fuzz takes place, you'd probably get a migraine.
Probably would.
Listeners, welcome to Back to the Movies, the one and only podcast where we go back to a certain year of cinema to investigate and, I guess, what do? We do like a deep dive on 40 or 50 different movies of a certain year.
We put a year of cinema in context. We look at a bunch of the films that came out that year, and we try and track the trends and the themes and the creative voices that all work together to shape that cinematic milieu.
And what year are we doing for this season?
2007, baby.
2007. 14 years from 2021 when we're recording this
Wow.
podcast. And today's episode, as we've mentioned before, is Hot Fuzz. But before we get into Hot Fuzz, listeners, we just wanted to reach out to you for a moment and ask that you continue supporting us by rating, subscribing if you already haven't, reviewing on all the podcast platforms, the podcast, and sharing with your friends.
I'm giving them 1 star as we speak.
God damn it. Years of work down the drain. Barrett, you've offset our rating.
You've wrecked our algorithm. We know we shouldn't have invited you back.
I know.
So, yeah, guys, if you can, please do whatever you can to help spread the gospel of Back to the Movies.
Actually, I sometimes I do I have a friend named Real Breaking Nate, and he does a Pokemon podcast that's like pretty popular. And after I went on the show a couple times, I went and looked at his reviews, and one of them said, love the show. Could you please not have Barrett Leddy on anymore? He always takes the show like it's really disorganized whenever he's on, and he doesn't make a lot of sense. And so
Then you looked at the author of the review, and it was Barrett Leddy.
That's like the review on your movie poster, Barrett. It's like,
right.
Can we please not? No, we love to have Barrett here. He was a great guest for our horror sequel. What was it called? It was a really weird
trifecta
name.
of
Horror or Borer.
Yes. An excellent
Horror
name.
Borealis.
We did Exorcist 3, Gremlins 2, and Child's Play 2 with Barrett. We had a wonderful time. Check out the episode if you haven't. It's one of our most popular episodes. So Barrett, you're selling yourself a little too short.
You're right. And in the episode, we were like, "Oh, good thing this COVID thing's going to be done in like a month." We were prophetic.
Exactly. So now today we're talking about Hot Fuzz, the 2007 Edgar Wright action comedy spectacular. All right, before we get into Hot Fuzz, I wanted to quickly shout out to our listener Izzy, who had a great suggestion, which is that we should recap the movie quickly before we get into Ben's book report corner and our discussion of it, because not everyone has the bandwidth to rewatch the movie. So we came up with this idea. Jesse and Izzy had this great idea to do a game of sorts, a challenge, a Hunger Games.
What's Ben's book report corner?
That's when Ben goes on and on and on about the production history of the movie.
That's when I do talk about all the boring stuff that I really like to talk about.
Ben's book report corner sounds like a place I'd tell children not to go.
I'd agree with that.
Stay away from
sound advice. They would be bored to tears.
So here's what we're going to do. Since Ben gets his whole section of Ben's book report corner, we're going to have a section where I take over the show called Nat's Narrative. And if anyone has a better name for this section of the show, please shoot us an email. BttMpod@gmail.com. Just like our Instagram and Twitter handles. Yes, we'd love suggestions. But for now, it's Nat's Narrative. So what is the rule here?
Barrett, what was your suggestion for the name? I thought it was a pretty good one.
Wasn't it Nat's Synopsis?
Nat's Synopsis.
Nat's
Synopsis.
Nat's Synopsis. I can't say it. No.
It's not Nops.
It's like a portmanteau of Nats and Synopsis just flowing right into each other.
What about a starboard woman finger?
What is that? Like a lady finger?
Portmanteau.
Oh. Right.
Dan, you like that? You like that?
It was a finger.
It sounded very, very British, kind of like Hot Fuzz.
It did.
Okay, so here's the deal. I have 60 seconds to give a plot summary of Hot Fuzz, and I haven't practiced at all. I just watched the movie yesterday. I'm sure both of you will be timing me. Ben's got his finger on the goddamn clock. And yeah, Ben is he's just gonna be really tough on me, and he's gonna time me so I can do this as fast as possible. Are we ready?
Are you ready, Nat?
I'm ready.
Okay, you ready?
Are you both timing me? This is gonna get really confusing.
I'm gonna let Barrett lead you in.
I want a time. Yeah, I want a time.
Okay, Barrett's gonna time. Okay.
Okay, ready?
I'm ready.
3, 2, 1.
All right, a hotshot police inspector in England goes from the big city. He basically gets demoted by his superiors who think he's too good, and he's got to go to the countryside, the English countryside, where he finds an idyllic village where nothing is happening. It's boring, there's no crime, and he makes kind of friends with the fat, bumbling police chief's son. And they are just going around trying to find escaped swans, but there's a conspiracy afoot. People start getting murdered mysteriously in like weird accidents. Eventually, it's unraveled that there was a grand conspiracy, and the two guys have to team up and get into a huge shootout with all of the old people running the town. It's a comedy, madcap.
5,
in the end,
4,
they win.
3,
and
2,
that's
1.
pretty much the movie.
There we go.
I think I did okay. I mean,
that was it was 60 seconds.
It's hard.
You covered the whole film.
I did. I did a lot of exposition, but I think I got there in the end.
At the end, you had to be like, and they get into some hijinks as like a kind of a summary of a general.
Yeah, shit happens. But yeah, that's
good.
That's the movie. The main guy is Simon Pegg, who we all know and love from the 2000s and like these kinds of Shaun of the Dead movies, and Nick Frost. It's a good movie. You should definitely watch it if you haven't recently. It's on HBO Max. And then come back and listen to the rest of this.
Barrett, had you seen this movie before?
Yes, years ago, like when most people would have seen it, probably, within a couple of years of it being released. The mid 2000s are you can either think of it as like being, I don't know, what are people's thoughts on like late to like 2000 to 2010 in film? There were some great films then. There were some odd films then.
What are our thoughts on that decade of film?
Just that decade in film in general. If you had to look back on it, how would you describe it?
We haven't done any of the other seasons yet, and my attitude may change the more in depth we go, but my impression at the time was that decade, 2000, 2010, was one of the worst decades for mainstream cinema in the history of the medium. Not to say there weren't great films, but that as a whole, as a collective, it was a bad time in which cinema regressed as an art form.
Are you saying that because there were just so many like clunkers, or are you saying that because
you see the rise of really like dominant franchises with very little artistic merit? You see a commoditization of IP over vision or voice. You see a lot of aesthetic trends I really didn't like. I was such a huge hater of shaky cam, and the prevalence there really killed me. The hyperactive editing styles that were so prevalent in action films, the rise of color grading, which I found so distracting, particularly in that first decade when it was so extreme. The orange and teals and stuff like that. Yeah, I just think it was kind of a big step back where at least like the big mainstream films were being made by less talented filmmakers, taking on less interesting subjects.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Ben here. I mean, there's a lot of great movies, and I think that history might treat it a bit more kindly than how we initially thought, but there's still so much crud, and a lot of the movies like aren't even that fun to watch versus watching stuff from like the 80s or the 70s or whatever, where you can kind of appreciate what was going on, even if it's not the greatest.
Yeah. I'm looking at films that were from the 2000s right now, and just there's something about them that when you think about them, like besides all the franchises, besides Lord of the Rings, besides Harry Potter, besides whatever, there's something like just inherently douchey about like the films and the fandom of these films.
What are some
like,
examples?
For example, V for Vendetta, Mean Girls, 500 Days of Summer, 40-Year-Old Virgin, Bridget Jones's Diary, Juno, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Mamma Mia, Donnie Darko. I don't know. There's something.
You heard it here first,
activity.
Everyone. If you're a fan of any of those movies, you're a douche.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying there's a lot of douche lore around a lot of these films.
There is. I mean, you're right. This is the rise. 2000s with the internet is the rise of extreme fan culture. You know, of the echo chamber, of the isolated fan community, of fan ownership, fan backlash, ain't it cool news. All of that stuff is happening in this decade and is really has the risk of becoming toxic. I don't think it did in every case. I'm
not saying I don't love a lot of these films, but like The Departed or No Country for Old Men, you know, films like that. But I will say there's something, I don't know, they seem very of its time.
I think you have to look at the 2000s as a whole. It was a very douchey time.
It was a difficult time.
It was a difficult time and a douchey time. Like, people were douchebags. Like, popular culture was centered around the douchebag.
Social
at that
media
time.
and right.
It was like,
you're right. It's the rise of the Facebook status, you know.
Well,
like
and reality TV,
reality TV,
but like without any of the MTV aesthetic, like that was curated. Like it was just more about like who's the loudest. Me. Right. So, I don't know, Barrett. I don't know where this discussion was going to lead us, but...
This is pretty negative, but...
Yeah, I
want to say, Barrett, and to sort of echo what you just said, I love a lot of films from this decade. And in fact, I've liked every movie we've watched this season, which I couldn't say about 1990.
Except for 300.
Except for 300, you're right. I hate 300. Another movie that has a douchey fan base, potentially.
Perhaps the douchiest of all.
Avatar.
I really have... enjoyed revisiting these films. I think there's a lot of good here. At the time, that was my impression. And it could have been colored by a lot of things. I remember, you know, this was when I really came into my own as an Oscar watcher, and I was really obsessed with the Oscars. And the 2000s is a run of some pretty mediocre Oscar winners. A lot of great films got overlooked in favor of less interesting ones. The time is forgotten. That's one of the things that I really remember about the decade.
I mean, if you look at just the highest grossing films of 2007, particular, we have, you know, Pirates of the Caribbean. It's a lot of franchises, like you said, Spider-Man
3, Transformers,
the Simpsons movie, you know, or just things like that, you know, whether you enjoy them or not, are not. It's not high art stuff.
It's definitely like the beginning of like a massive flailing of the movie industry in general.
But you know who's coming in right in the heart of this decade with a unique voice and a firm grasp of visual storytelling and a quirky and unique sensibility? Edgar Wright.
Yes. The
Edgar
filmmaker
Wright.
behind Hot Fuzz.
Somebody who's like working sort of within the milieu of the 2000s. You know, he's making action movies and horror movies, but he's doing them in his own way and really shining through the material.
Yeah.
He's also homaging the shit out of the things that he grew up on, which is another
we're gonna
huge
talk about that.
Another huge component of the 2000s. It's like when like any and all nostalgia became like fully monetized beyond like one movie. Like, oh, we made a movie that takes place in the 70s, in the 90s. It's like, no, now like everything is monetized from your past. And like Edgar Wright is doing a kind of a form of that with these like kind of semi-parody, semi-homage, like loving yarns of these genres that he grew up on.
And he's certainly not the first person to do that. Tim Burton's someone who comes to mind.
Tarantino.
But he kind of takes it to a new level where it almost sometimes doesn't feel like he's interpreting it through his own voice, more that he's just like a megaphone amplifying other people's achievements. He's a curator. He's like taking pieces from one thing, pieces from another, and putting them together in a new mosaic.
Yeah. Ben, I saw this movie in theaters when it came out. I went out with some young lads. We saw it like opening weekend. It was a big deal. It was this follow-up to Shaun of the Dead, and everyone was like, oh shit, it's more Shaun of the Dead, but now they're cops. This is going to be awesome.
Yeah. This was definitely a big one for us too in the spring of 2007. I've always been a big horror fan. Shaun of the Dead was like the horror movie I would show people who didn't like horror movies. Right. And so by the time this came around, me and a bunch of buddies just like you went to see it at the theater. Had a great time.
Me and the lads.
I'm trying to think of other film series like in the past that have drawn from like the same casts and then put them into a new film.
Oh, like filmmakers using the same cast over and over?
Yeah, or franchises or whatever, yeah.
Sort of
like,
the idea of the Three Flavors Cornetto trilogy where it's the same creative team behind it, it's the same predominant cast members, it's the same thematic and narrative elements, just kind of remixed.
Same kind of,
that would be
the same audience.
Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and The World's End are called the Three Flavors Cornetto trilogy because they're all made by the same film people and they all include Cornetto, which is not an American thing, right? It's a very
but we got like
it's a very British thing.
Ice cream cone.
Yeah, it's the little shitty ice cream cone that you get out of the freezer.
Where are we at on those, by the way?
They're great.
They're stupid. Oh,
you're telling me, Barrett, you wouldn't eat one if you were presented with one for free?
I'll eat one. It's just not. It's like, why is that so prominent?
In these movies?
Here's the thing. I'd never eat one like on the go. Like I'd never go to a convenience store, get an ice cream, and walk around eating.
That would be a little.
If someone
weird.
had it if someone had it at their house, I'd partake. But I'm not gonna carry around ice cream.
You're not gonna buy one.
Night. No.
Well,
I would never buy one.
You wouldn't carry around like a shitty freezer ice cream because you'd obviously carry around an ice cream cone from like a scoop shop.
I used to think when I lived in Bushwick, I was unemployed for like a couple months, and I would sometimes during the day when I just had to get out of the apartment when I wasn't like looking for jobs or trying to do something, I'd walk around and I'd see like an ice cream truck, and I thought, there's something so rock bottom to me about like a guy in his 20s, a guy in his like mid-20s, middle of the workday, alone, having an ice cream. It's just something about that just makes me so depressed.
This movie leads into that pretty heavily, though. The cornetto is like a symbol of not giving a fuck anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
And the DVDs and, I don't know.
Well, listen, we all have our own personal version of rock bottom. I would enjoy an ice cream on a summer's day, even if I wasn't employed. But that's just me. I don't think there's any shame in enjoying a $1.50 ice cream cone.
I think there is. Ice cream is a social food.
Ice cream is a social food?
Ice cream's not meant for alone.
Are you kidding me? I bet ice cream is like the top 10 alone food. It might be the #1 food. You ever have a good cry and a pint?
One shame food.
Anyone who says that is an enabler of destructive habits.
Wow. Your values are amazing.
Now, we're worried you might be an ice creamaholic.
I definitely am. So yeah, Edgar Wright's making this movie with this team after doing Shaun of the Dead, which was like kind of a huge breakout hit. Should we do some book reporting?
Yeah, let's get into Ben's book report corner.
Hide your kids. Hide your kids.
The person you got to talk about first, we already mentioned him, Edgar Wright. In 2007, Edgar Wright is not a household name yet, but he certainly is a cult figure. We mentioned in our Dances with Wolves episode during the 1990 season how that film reignited the Western genre, how it had been basically dead, and that film brought it back to life, made it viable again. And one of the people who benefited from that was Edgar Wright, who in 1995 makes his first feature-length film, a micro-budget Western spoof called A Fistful of Fingers.
And I just want to mention something that I found in my personal book reporting. Edgar Wright was 22 when he made that. And he's just one of those classic cinematic whiz kids. He's like in the Spielberg camp of like children who just made movie after movie after movie and just went to art school for film and just kept making movies and like never served in the army, never worked on an oil rig, just was always making fucking movies.
Yeah. And you know, it wasn't a widely seen film, but it got a limited theatrical release in the UK. It got picked up for TV, and it leads to him getting work directing television.
In England.
One of the
in England.
TV shows in England, which is where he's from. One of the TV shows was a TV comedy called Spaced, which was created by, written by, and starred Simon Pegg. That one was a pretty big hit, and it was successful enough that it allowed Pegg and Wright to collaborate on their first studio-financed feature film, Shaun of the Dead.
Which was a hit.
It was a hit. It was a pretty moderate hit. It wasn't a big money spinner, but it was really popular with critics and had a big cult following. And so it was enough cachet to get this film made, and this film was pretty cheap. So that got this off the ground.
Okay.
When they sat down to make this, Wright and Pegg, who wrote the script together, talked about how they wanted to make a cop action film. That's their term. And they mean something sort of in the vein of like Lethal Weapon or the 80s like buddy cop
or
comedy.
Like Police Academy kind of a thing. I don't know, something like that. Maybe a little
specifically
with that
leaning
British...
into the action elements as well. Point Break obviously is a point of reference, the Bad Boys films. And it's sort of interesting. They both felt it was something that was missing from British cinema. Like there just isn't part of their cinematic history. That wasn't what they were doing at the time. They really never picked it up. So I thought that was sort of an interesting question. Like, who are the iconic British cops in movies? Or like, what are the iconic British cop movies?
Well, I mean, if you're going to say maybe not Bond, but if you want to include that.
Bond is certainly the most interesting question because, I mean, he's not really a cop, but he is a law enforcer. And they are Britain's most famous action exports.
I feel like the Brits are way better at like their gangsters. They love their Michael Caine's like killing people. Like
right.
Yeah. They also like the really dour cop drama. Like investigating the community, the Midsummer Murders. Obviously,
Yes.
Wicker Man is a big reference point for this movie. And that the original Wicker Man is just such a depressing movie.
Yeah.
As was the remake for different reasons.
I mean, I feel like there's not a lot of like European action movies. And I know we're saying cop movies, but like
the French have a big action tradition.
Oh, okay.
There's a whole what is Luc Besson, his whole like school of action filmmaking. There's a bunch of filmmakers who came out of that.
Oh, cool.
That all basically worked through his system.
I gotta check those out, man.
You know, things like the Transporter series, and I mean, there's a whole bunch of them.
Right.
What do they call them? Europa something.
Yeah, I don't know. The Brits just want to have an investigation. They don't want to shoot everyone. That would be.
They're very staid culture, right? They're
Yeah.
not like a big bombastic culture, which is one of the joys of this movie. Is that you know that dichotomy of like these really stuffy old folks in this conservative British country town, and then just the balls to the wall explosive finale where they're running down the street with guns.
Right. It's brilliant. It's like, yeah, I'll talk about what I think this is influenced, but like it's so much fun.
Speaking of the town, that was Wright's hometown. That's where he grew up. And how wonderful is that? Who doesn't want to make a movie that's basically about them like violently destroying their hometown from where they were a kid? That would be so much fun. That's all I want to do now.
Sure.
And he even has a cameo where he's stacking shelves in the supermarket. And that is the supermarket where he worked as a shelf stocker when he was a kid. Like, there's some really interesting personal stuff there.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
I was thinking about this while I was watching because obviously he had that kind of unexpected breakout hit with Shaun of the Dead. And I figured that going into his next movie, Edgar Wright could have gone either two ways. Either because Shaun of the Dead did so well, they didn't need to rely on any like American stars or any, for it to become an appeal, for it to like, attract audiences in America, or like it could have gone the other way where like now that they had this big hit, the studio executives and whatever could have encouraged and butted in and have them like put in a Sam Jackson or Angelina Jolie, and to kind of like and they could have gotten like too big for their britches. But it seems like this movie has a pretty outsized reputation, but it was a super small production. Right.
These are all mostly kind of like undervalued British actors, people who played bit parts or character parts in older films, or up-and-comers like Simon Pegg, who's only just starting to emerge as an international star. It's financed by British film companies. Like, I don't know that they saw this as being a big international production until it did have a fair amount of success.
But do you think because the first, like Shaun of the Dead, obviously it had that zombie angle, it had that kind of like horror parody angle, which has always sort of had a place. But when they're doing this police movie, just because it worked the first time, they don't, it does, just because everyone went out to see the zombie movie doesn't mean they're all going to come out to see the police movie. Do you think there was enough like reputation that they'd built up to get people to come out and see that same team? Because even after Shaun of the Dead, it's not like Simon Pegg and them were all like box office stars, except, maybe in England.
Yeah. Dude, I was ready to go see it. I was a 17-year-old and I was like, I'll go see it. I mean, I honestly think they played it pretty safe. If they're going to give this guy more money to make another movie, he's doing kind of the same thing that he did with zombies, but now he's doing it with cops. Like
But you always think they're going to go bigger, better. Oh, now that we know it worked one time, let's add a co-star in and let's like spice it up a little bit. Let's put someone in.
But the first one wasn't like this huge hit. Like Ben said, it was a modest hit. So it's like they'll give them a modest budget for the next one.
And it's not like they didn't do that. Also, to Barrett's point, like they brought in Jim Broadbent, an Oscar winner and a veteran actor. They're just doing it from like the British side of the pond.
Right.
Because it's a British company. So they're not getting Sam Jackson or Angelina Jolie because they're not a Hollywood company. They're getting, Jim Broadbent and Olivia Coleman and whoever else, Patty Considine and Timothy Dalton. Yeah, Dalton.
I have a lot to say about Dalton. Favorably. I have a lot to say about Dalton. But yeah.
So, I mean, in a lot of ways they did go bigger, and I'm sure that they saw it as being that kind of progressive step, but it seems so quaint to us because it's so removed from the bombast of the Hollywood studio system.
Yeah.
But I didn't see it. I saw it as almost like it was good, but I saw it as almost like a lateral move, like they broke even in a way.
Sure.
Like they played it safe.
It definitely plays it safe, as Nat was saying, with like kind of hitting the same beats with the same tone. But then again, it's also Wright's second, third feature film.
Yeah,
he's
still really like experimenting, getting the ropes underneath him.
Isn't it amazing, by the way, for the amount of films, mainstream films that he's been in, Bill Nye is still not like a household name. Isn't that insane? Like, what does this guy have to do to be a household name? It's always just that one part.
He does so much garbage is the problem.
And he's always like the fifth build guy. He's never the second build or third build guy.
Pirates of the Caribbean?
He was in an octopus CGI suit. How would you expect to recognize him?
If you need a villain for your cheesy, metal horror action film, and Ben Kingsley wants too much money, you call Bill Nye, and then you're good.
Yeah.
I think also these actors, they start doing these shit films, and then people just pigeonhole them as doing shit films. Like even Ben Kingsley, like he'll do those. Like Ben Kingsley will never be again like top billed in something.
No,
I'll never get another Gandhi.
No. So like, but you will see him pop up in like Shutter Island, for example, where he's like very effectively used. But it is interesting to see these British actors who are like so mainstream there and yet are still like in that supporting role. Whereas like you get sometimes like those breakout stars like Jim Broadbent, like because you have obviously like he was in Harry Potter and everything, but a lot of times you get these like franchises that are just so much bigger than the actors.
I think you just put the finger on it, which is just that like there's very limited roles that British actors are offered in Hollywood films unless they can pass for American with their accent and with the performance. And there are so few franchises where they can get the kind of mainstream appeal and notoriety. And Harry Potter was one of them. And you know, that's more or less wrapped up. I guess they're still making Fantastic Beast movies, but they're probably going to stop at some point.
Kill me.
And even those, they keep casting Americans in them. Poor Brits.
Listen, I think that your bar for household names is also really, really high. Like
we know them.
I know. I don't think your typical household knows like Alan Rickman's name. They just know like Snape.
He's been meme-ified.
Nah.
Alan Rickman's like Bruce Campbell or someone like who's been meme-ified to the point where like people like, or Chuck Norris. You don't watch Chuck Norris movies, but you just know him from memes and stuff. Like, I don't know.
I bet people don't even know like who Philip Seymour Hoffman is at this point. Like a typical American household.
I would say, I don't know.
I think it's like you have like 10 names that you can reliably be like household name, and that's it. Like
Tom Hanks, Tom Cruise.
Yeah. We have to start talking about Hot Fuzz.
We got to talk about Simon Pegg really briefly. I just want to shout him out because obviously he's best known as an actor, but he really is a much more significant creative contributor to this film and to Shaun of the Dead. You know, he was a writer as well. Spaced, the TV show that launches him and Edgar Wright, is his baby, not Edgar Wright's baby. He co-writes Shaun of the Dead. He co-writes this film. So even though right at this time he's starting to emerge as a great character actor, he's already been in Mission Impossible 3. Star Trek is just around the corner. So he's becoming a star. He is more than just the lead actor in this film.
Did these guys all like study together somewhere, like Steve Coogan, and did these guys all come from the same school?
A lot of them are coming from TV, and British TV is a lot different than American TV, where shows usually run for 1 or 2 seasons, and there's a lot of cross-pollination. There's a lot of like people experimenting and trying out new things.
Unless you're doing like those, but then again, you say that, but then again, there are these. I mean, British TV has so many long-running shows.
They've got their soap operas
and The Bill, and
but all these guys were on those like 1 or 2 season comedies like The Office and like
basically every supporting character in this: Steve Coogan, Martin Freeman, Paddy Considine, Bill Bailey. They're all coming from TV shows that Edgar Wright directed episodes of. Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, like that's where they're all coming from. Olivia Coleman, like they've all been kicking around and working in that medium. And so that's where they all start showing up.
A lot of people who really like, after like 5, 6 years later, like just like launched like into the stratosphere.
This cast is fucking insane. Like if you look through it, it's so crazy.
I'm looking.
They're all in this silly little action spoof.
Even Martin Freeman, you could argue, is like kind of underused.
Totally.
Like to see him like later as like Lester Nygaard in Fargo and then Bilbo Baggins, like. He's kind of doing like, what the hell is he in this?
Well, I think that's more of like a... Martin Freeman was pretty famous in England at the time. I almost think that those 3 guys are kind of a cameo.
They're like 3 generations of like, I don't know, camp iconic actors.
Yeah, I think that those guys, it was like a wink. Like, hey, it's Martin Freeman. We love him from The Office.
God,
Yay.
That scene, I love that scene so much. When they're all great. Like, when they're telling him that he's been assigned and they each keep popping in. And they all look the same.
All right, can we start talking about the movie?
I just wanted to mention one last name. One last name.
Jesus, it's Ben's Booker Court Encyclopedia.
Well, we've been talking about a lot of other shit, you know. If you're a fan of these films, if you're a fan of these films, you should also know the name Nira Park. She produced this film. She produced all of Edgar Wright's films, and she is cited alongside Pegg and Wright, by Peg and Wright, as being another major contributor. That her DNA is all over this film as well.
Oh, there you go.
So that's a name we should know.
Noted. Okay, let's talk about this movie. I wanted to just say, like, this movie has a lot of jokes that are like really well thought out, and it's pretty awesome.
Yes.
It's like nice to see, because we've talked already about the Apatow factor in 2007,
Right?
And this is like the anti-Apatow factor. This movie, like, everything is planned meticulously.
Yes,
And it's fun. It's fun to watch crazy comedy craftsmanship.
Do you ever watch the Every Frame a Painting about Edgar Wright's comedy?
Long
visual
ago,
comedy?
the YouTube video film series, intellectual film series.
Yeah, there's only like a dozen episodes, but it's one of the best YouTube film analysis series of all time. And he really gets into that, about how radical Wright's use of visual comedy is, particularly at this time, when comedy's moving away from that. We talked about it in our Walk Hard episode, but comedy is moving away from a visual medium, and it's becoming very much about what the people are saying. You park it in a wide, you let them riff, and that's it.
But not only that, but the script is also very witty, and there's a lot of like wordplay and stuff like that. It's not just people coming up with like the best your mama joke or like whatever shit they would say to each other in those kind of movies.
It took me a little while. Eventually I did get used to it and like adjust to it, but there was like, you had some aspects of the film that were more like broad comedy kind of based, pratfalls. But then you had like kind of Python-esque stuff, like the crossword puzzle bit where he keeps insulting her. And, he calls her a hag or something. And at first I was like, it's got to be one or the other, right? Because as it was mixing out, but then eventually it did find its groove. It took me a little while to like find the flow.
It's like a mashup. It's like a girl talk song. It's like taking different things from different elements and just mashing them together, like Ben was saying.
Which is a dangerous move.
You're right, though. It does take you a second to like adjust, because there's so much zazziness, especially the beginning of the movie. It comes at you 100 miles an hour.
The beginning of the movie is about literally nothing happening. Like, nothing happens in this movie until the first murder, which is, 45 minutes in.
Yeah.
And yet it feels like a bullet train. There's so much hyperkinetic visual storytelling and narrative being thrown at you as we get introduced to Nick Angel. We see him get assigned to the town, and then he travels to the town, and we get a sense of what the town is like.
But like the aggressiveness of all the transitions is striking. Yeah. It's like you guys have seen Snatch, right?
Yeah,
sure.
There's a scene in Snatch where like cousin Avi, played by Dennis Farina, has to go to London from New York, and like to visualize that he goes to London, it's like really quick cut, heavy sound design of like him getting a cab, him taking a shot on the plane, him stamping his ticket. It's like dun 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 dun, and like it's basically like Edgar Wright was like, what if we just made a whole movie that was like cousin Avi going to London in like 5 seconds?
Yes,
it's fucking aggressive. It's super aggressive, almost to a fault, honestly.
Look, I think that one of the best things about the movie in the first half is where it takes all the tedious elements of being a police officer and films them and edits them like they're action sequences.
Yeah,
right.
That's really funny, and it's also engaging, because that's naturally engaging.
Yeah.
But then the movie kind of doesn't have anywhere to go once the plot starts picking up, because it's already done the hyper stylization. So like, how do you make the action more exciting than carrying your plant from London to Stratford?
The movie still wins me over, though. When the finale goes down, it amps me up for sure.
Right.
In a real way, not in a funny way, in a real way.
Rewatchability is this is like a guilty pleasure kind of film, I think, because it I don't know, for whatever reason it does like take you back to that time when you first saw it.
Yeah, you get invested in it. You get invested in the balls to the wall story, and the action itself is just like, it's good action. It's not like a shitty parody. Like it's pretty exciting when it goes down. But the transitions and like just it's so aggressive, and like I had forgotten how aggressive it was.
The sound design on the cuts, the match cuts, the tempo of the edits. It's a lot of it's being done in the edits because there are some really aggressive camera moves too, but it's mostly the tempo of the editing.
Yeah. So let's talk about the main character, Shaun. Shaun of the Dead. Definitely trying to resist the typecast because in Shaun of the Dead, he was this schlub, and now he's going completely 180, and he's this straight-laced, physically, mentally fit cop.
Right, he's got to be refined, a little more put together.
Yeah.
I think the movie works best if you have some familiarity with Shaun of the Dead, because watching him go from this really tight-assed super cop to something closer to his Shaun of the Dead character is really fun.
Yeah.
But you have to kind of be rooting for that. You have to know that there's another version of this guy to want to see that happen.
I mean, this is basically just a sequel to Shaun of the Dead. Let's not. It's the same trilogy, for Christ's sake. Like, it's a sequel to Shaun of the Dead. It's the same two guys. It's almost like a better version of a sequel. It's like, just make a different movie, but like with all the same people, but don't put a 2 on it. Stuff. But I guess that doesn't sell as well, so you can't do that. But yeah, he's great as like straight-laced. I totally bought it. You know, he did a good job of being that character, and it's really funny when he goes to the town for the first time and he's busting everyone. It's also just really funny, the montage in the very beginning, like him.
Yes. That is good.
Speaking of what Ben said, like it's funny if you've seen Shaun of the Dead because you know it's fucking Simon Pegg. Like this is not who he's supposed to be playing, and it's funny to like see him doing the Departed montage of like cop training.
It's not just Shaun of the Dead, but he's also done Mission Impossible at this point, which was a big film in which he plays a person who's skilled but is a buffoon.
Right, he's a funny guy.
The Benji character is like he's like a fuck up,
and in this one he's the straight man.
He's always been like, you know, the foil.
Yeah,
you know, in some ways, and so it is fun. It is fun when someone like that takes the reins as, you know, the leading man.
So then we got to talk about his BFF, Nick Frost, who did not decide to play a different character. He's playing the exact same character from Shaun of the Dead that he played.
I was trying to go through and find a list of like buddy cop movies where we get like skinny, dignified guy and fat, obnoxious kind of like partner. All right.
Sure. Laurel and Hardy.
Starting with Laurel and Hardy, going from, you know, all throughout the you know, Tommy Boy and then The Heat and 21 Jump Street and stuff. It is always interesting that they do that. They pull, and also it reminded me a little bit of like the Book of Mormon.
Oh yeah, the Book of Mormon.
But absolutely. It's really Book of Mormon. That is a close comparison.
Yes, yeah.
I'm going to argue with a little bit, Nat. I actually think that Danny is a lot richer a character than the one Frost plays in Shaun of the Dead. He's a lot more sympathetic. He's a lot sort of rounder as a character.
Probably don't want to say he's rounder, but anyways.
But yeah, I mean, I haven't seen Shaun of the Dead in a long time. All I remember is like he's a slob.
Yeah, in Shaun of the Dead, he's a slob. That is his character.
This is kind of the same deal. Like he's not reversing course like Simon Pegg did.
Right. I agree with that.
Sorry to cheat you out of an argument, Ben, but you're not going to get me this time.
What I'm saying is, what I'm building to is Frost is my favorite performance in this movie.
Oh yeah, he's amazing.
I think he's really good. I think the Danny character is the reason the movie works, is because he so quickly wins you over to the idea of wanting Nick Angel to loosen up.
Oh yeah.
He is our avatar in the movie, being like, come on, man, let's have a fun action movie. And he does it so earnestly and so well.
That's what's fun about it.
He does. And he just wants to be his friend, and he wants him to, loosen up. It's really fun to watch.
It's fun because he's so comfortable in his skin. Whereas Simon Pegg is clearly he's doing kind of a fish out of water thing. And so I think you do naturally gravitate to the person who's, I think in any film, anytime you show like the outsider coming in and now he's assigned to this crazy, you know, he has to, you know, preside over this crazy district. And I think we as the audience kind of naturally gravitate towards the person who's already there. He's already accustomed to like the craziness of this world. And Frost does that for us.
Oh yeah.
He invites us into the world. Otherwise if it wasn't for him, we'd feel like Simon Pegg the whole time.
One of the things that's really apparent about the film is that the character is an amalgamation of a buddy and a romantic interest. In early drafts, there was a romantic interest for Nick Angel, who was just folded into the Danny character without even like changing any of the dialogue. And it plays so good. There's so many great scenes.
They should do that in every movie, or like every
really
50% of movies, at least.
Wow.
Because like, if you're just putting a romance in to make it a romance, just make it friends.
Their bromance is so much more meaningful than I would assume basically any half-assed romance could have been.
It's like the producers. It's like Bialystock and Bloom.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it just streamlines things, and like, I feel like that has become way more popular, right? Like bromance is, or cismance. Is there a female version of this? I don't know. But like it's happened. I just don't know if it's been defined.
Well, and particularly in the 2000s, because you had things like Scrubs, you had things like the Judd Apatow films, which really forwarded it. Like it became like a big narrative point that showed up in a bunch of things.
You have a lot of that now. That would lead to it. The Heat and Bridesmaids.
Yeah. Maybe they took a few pages from the Fuzz.
It's all coming out of like the buddy cops of the 80s, but where those relationships were really competitive, these relationships are really more about like mutual support and affection.
Right. Exactly.
Can we do we have time to talk about Dalton or
before we do, I just want to in one place, I just want to run down just like a fraction of this cast list and just list the names. Because it's really insane. Like, we already mentioned it, but I just want to put the names out there for the record. We got Simon Pegg. We got Nick Frost. Other major names that I would expect many people to recognize: Jim Broadbent, Timothy Dalton, Patty Considine, Rafe Spall, Bill Nighy, Martin Freeman, Steve Coogan, Olivia Coleman, who's going to win Best Actress in a decade from this, Stephen Merchant, Kate Blanchett is in this movie. We don't even see her face. Then you've got people like Rory McCann and Bill Bailey and David Bradley and Paul Freeman, who's Belloc in Raiders of the Lost Ark, who are all like recognizable faces, but at the time like weren't well-known names. And then you've even got some of the older actors are like deep cuts from British cinema that are like in-jokes for cinema nerds. So Billy Whitelaw, who plays the hotel owner, she's the evil nurse from The Omen.
Yes. That was her last film.
This was her last film?
This was her last film, Billy Whitelaw, who was from The Omen, and she was great. She was awesome.
She's great in this, and like her role's even better if you know that connection, because then when the payoff is that like she's secretly evil, it's a great little joke. And in the same token, Edward Woodward is one of the villagers as well, and he's the cop from The Wicker Man. He's the main character of The Wicker Man.
It's great when you see when filmmakers are fans of films the way Edgar Wright and Tim Burton and Tarantino, and other people are, who will put those homages in. Because it's great if you're gonna have a creepy person, take someone from an old creepy movie. You already have that. It already works. You already have that built-in, that heat behind it. It's great.
Did we mention the Hound from Game of Thrones?
Rory McCann.
Because he's in there. It's so funny.
Yarp.
All right.
Let's talk Dalton. Speaking of creeps.
Yes.
I love Dalton.
I fucking love Dalton in this movie so much.
He's so great.
He's a creep, all right. He's telegraphed from the first minute you see him as just a total creep weirdo. I like that the movie is never trying to like be mysterious at all. They're just like, this guy's the bad guy. Don't worry about it.
He also has the best photo smiling match smile that's ever been in a movie.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Like when he stands up next to the picture and smiles, it's the best that joke has ever been done.
I mean, I'm sure Dalton has practiced that smile for many years. Just probably photographed so much. He just knows how to do it. Puts on that Bond charm that he's got. It is marvelous that he just is just so slimy and gross, and the movie is just letting you relish in that,
And it's just to look at like from the time he did License to Kill in 1989, between that and then like when he randomly showed up in Toy Story 3 or something, like kind of in 2010, not a lot going on in the career of Timothy Dalton, but he's so great in stuff that it's like, and I love that people are appreciating him now. He's on Doom Patrol, that he was on that DC show.
Penny Dreadful. He was
Penny Dreadful. Yeah, but he's so good.
At the time, he was almost like blacklisted because he had been cast in a bunch of erotic thrillers and romantic dramas after Bond. I mean, he's a very handsome man, and many of them were terrible, and he in particular was lambasted for his performances in them. He won basically multiple British equivalents of the Razzies. Like, he was considered to be like a horrible pretty boy actor.
So this is like his John Travolta
a little bit
Pulp Fiction moment.
In a way.
Very cool.
He had a lot of success on the stage. It
had been a long time since someone trusted him, actually doing a feature film. Like, the last thing he did was maybe, if I'm looking at it, Looney Tunes Back in Action or something like that. Yeah.
Probably, making fun of himself for being Bond, too, I bet.
Exactly. That's what he was getting. No one was... And a lot of times, the way these older actors kind of reinvent themselves is through doing comedies.
Yeah.
Which is, it's like someone who's known for being, someone like a Timothy Dalton. You have them come back, they do a comedy, and people realize, well, hold on, they're actually they're really good.
Yeah.
Now we could use them for all sorts of stuff.
Controversial opinion. He is my favorite Bond.
Nah, I had you pegged for a Lazenby guy.
Look, On Her Majesty's Secret Service is one of the best Bond movies ever made.
Yeah, that skiing is so realistic.
I mean, listen, I'm a Connery man. I like a good Connery. What can I say? But yeah, he's a good Bond. He's underappreciated for sure. It's a cool version of it.
I have something I want to talk about. As we were meeting all these characters, a series of murder starts happening, as Nat alluded to during his narrative. Nat's narrative. His synopsis.
It's really hard to say.
And the murders are really interesting, right? Because they're so not a piece with the action movie parts of this movie. This movie bills itself as a parody of action films. But what action movie have you ever seen that has horrific cult murders in it? Those are straight out of a horror film. And so it got me really thinking about whether or not this movie is actually a parody.
It's not. It is in some scenes. It's a girl talk movie.
I like that
It's
analogy.
just taking all these things that he likes and putting them together in a nice package. Because, no one's ever going to, put a girl talk song in, a music theory book, but they're really fun to listen to. You get all these different elements, and it sounds really cool, but it's ultimately just, kind of an exercise.
It can be occasionally disorienting, though.
It's got that, when it went into the cult thing, it kind of got that, that Tropic Thunder kind of twist when they all, I don't know, it reminded me of that when they all got captured, and all of a sudden it's whoa, hold on, now it's a whole different movie.
Yeah, it's shocking comedy gore. It's oh my god, this is so crazy.
Do you like that, or do you like? I almost don't like when we've built a world and then they have to disrupt that world in a way. But I don't know. Do you like that, the cult thing?
The cult, I like the cult. I mean, it's all in the service of laughing, I think, and
right.
I was laughing, that scene where they reveal that the cult is just killing people for no reason other than really petty grievances. It's kind of funny.
That is my favorite scene in the movie.
Even the scenes with the gore, I remember being pleasantly shocked that it was even in the movie when I saw it. I was wow, I'm seeing something kind of different, and it's gross to a really crazy degree, and it's memorable, and it's it's cool. So I'm into it. But it's not cohesive. It's very Whiplash, kind of like Waitress, which we talked about last week.
Not quite my tempo.
Not quite my tempo. No, but it's a crazy tempo.
I want to put a pin in the reveal scene because I want to get back to it, but to return briefly to the parody conversation, the other element to it that sort of leaves me feeling a little bit off about it is that normally a parody film has something specific to say about that genre of movies and what it represents, or at least the good ones do. We talked about this a lot in Walk Hard.
Yeah, it was an indictment.
This movie doesn't really feel like it has much to say about action movies other than Edgar Wright likes them and wants to make one. What it reminds me of most is when a sitcom does a parody episode. Particularly something like the paintball episodes in Community, where they don't even really use it to parody action movies so much as just to make an action movie, but with their pre-established characters.
Right.
Yeah.
You said that, and I immediately thought of the great Cable Boy scene from Seinfeld.
Yeah.
Cable Boy.
I mean, I think that this movie is a comedy. before it's a parody. And it's just a
I'd agree with that.
It's a super cinematic comedy. Like it's a comedy that's taking notes from action movies.
That's really interesting, Nat, because when I think about Walk Hard, we talked about this, about how much more cinematic it was as a comedy than a lot of comedy films were, because it was specifically aping the styles of the films it was satirizing. And so maybe my brain is just programmed to interpret a cinematically proficient comedy as a parody, because that's the only other time I've seen it.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, normally if you're going to make your comedy look this good, it's because you're trying to make fun of movies that look like this. And here, that's not really the case.
Well, they're not making fun of it. It's clear that he loves it. Walk Hard, thought those movies were kind of bullshit and thought it was funny to make fun of them. But this is more like, these movies are really cool. And, we're going to make a funny one. And, it's a love. I mean, if you listen to that Tarantino, Edgar Wright conversation that just came out on the Empire Film Podcast, the dude has watched 20,000 movies and just fucking loves movies. And like I said earlier, he's never lived a life that isn't just movies. So of course the movie that he makes, the most personal movie that he could possibly make, is just homage to a bunch of
set in his hometown, about the desire to have a fantastic escape, to believe that your boring town is actually full of adventure and intrigue and mystery.
Yeah.
It's just full of movies.
Right. And if you can make us laugh along the way, which I did many times, then you got a successful comedy on your hands.
All right. I want to return to the reveal scene. I love this scene so much. It is one of the more overtly parodic. Is that the right use of that word? One of the scenes that is the most like a parody of this type of film. Okay. Because we have spent time investigating a mystery, and there is a very intricate solution that Simon Pegg walks us through, and then the scene just completely deflates it in favor of the most petty and surface level motivations for these characters. And it's so fucking brilliant, partly because they've all been set up so well. As Pegg has been investigating, all of these elements have been not just present, but highlighted. The annoying laugh, the garish house, all that stuff has been there. The terrible Romeo and Juliet performance, which I love that great. It's just Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. I love that so much. What a choice.
But you know what I noticed about that, Ben, was that it was just the two of them. They show the rest of the cast and they were in Renaissance outfits.
Yes.
So they just had the guns and the same costumes. Really weird.
Well, clearly the man was a terrible director and actor. But yeah, so just that choice, that inversion is so good. It speaks so well to this film's themes, about conservatism and about, tribalism and violence and the roots of violence. And it's also just so funny because it's so unexpected.
Yeah, it's funny shit.
Were you guys getting the strong Trumpism vibes? Well, someone literally says we're going to make Sanford great again. And then you've got these this conservative white majority working to undemocratically prevent racial minorities from entering their town.
It didn't occur to me immediately. But I can see where you're coming from. Absolutely.
I was getting more of the theme that we keep coming back to, which is the Iraq War thing, the WMDs, where it's wait, what? Why are we doing this? Why are you just
that's good.
There's no reason. His shock to stupid violence that is literally meaningless or has no meaning other than really petty grievances. That's what I was thinking of.
That's really good. I like that too.
Because Trump's village would not be Village of the Year. It would be
no.
It would be a casino.
It would be mostly that one guy's garish house.
Yeah, exactly. Are there any other performances that you guys wanted to call out in particular? Because there's so many to choose from.
Who's we love it's always so good to see I don't want to call him Filch. David Bradley.
David Bradley, yeah, it's great.
It's always just
Who did he play?
He's the farmer.
He's the farmer.
Oh, he's in it for 3 seconds, right? He's got.
But
the
bomb. He's got the bomb. But I love when you're watching something like this and David Bradley shows up, you're it almost feels like a stamp of approval in a way because he's in so many.
It's
of these
approved
things.
by the Queen.
It's approved by the Queen if David Bradley's in your film. But
absolutely.
Anyways,
I love Olivia Coleman in this movie, mostly with just like the foreknowledge of where she's going in her career, because she plays such a ditz, you know?
Well, I loved her since watching her on Broadchurch. That's the first time I encountered Olivia Coleman. But yeah, no, it is fun to see. And you wonder if these people today would ever do a film like this.
It's a great question. I mean, a good comparison is the other person I want to talk about, which is Patty Considine, who after making this goes on to make something like Tyrannosaur, a really personal film that he writes and directs, gets a lot of acclaim for, but then comes back for World's End. So like he's doing both.
Olivia Coleman was so good in this movie. She's so darling. And she has the best line, in my opinion, and the best action moment when she hits that lady in the face at the supermarket. And she's like, nothing like a little girl on girl. And then everyone just starts huge laughing. And she's got the best smile of all time.
Then they cut to Patty Considine first, who does the big, really theatrical laugh. He's got some of the best reactions. The thing that makes me laugh the hardest in the movie is when they are giving the two detectives, Rafe Spall and Patty Considine, are giving Angel a hard time about believing it's murder. And they do a funny exit from the frame where they're staring him in the eyes and they both creep out like one after the other. But then Patty Considine comes back into the frame. It's like a stupid little moment, but it just slays me. I think it's so funny.
Yeah, and like, I don't know, that whole Edgar Wright style, it's just so curated. Like, I don't know. I think, to me, the funniest action movie ever made, which this one's in the contention, but the funniest action movie ever made is Midnight Run. It is
it's a really good one.
So funny, but for like such opposite reasons than what makes this movie funny.
Interesting.
Like, it's just, Midnight Run is basically just like, it's like a 70s gritty character study of like two guys like arguing. It's almost like a Cassavetes fucking thing where
so you call this an action movie?
Hot Fuzz?
Yes. Yeah.
An action movie? Yeah, absolutely. There's so much action in this movie.
Yeah, but it's at its heart a comedy.
It's a comedy action movie. It's like
I would
a
say
funny
the
action
same
movie.
about Midnight Run.
If
I had to choose, is it a comedy or an action? It's obviously a comedy, but
okay,
it's got a lot of action in its heart too, and it's like good action. It's not just like bullshit. And I think Midnight Run's the same way. It's like a funny movie first, but there's a lot of like quality action. But the point I was making was that like they're so funny, but in like such different ways. Like in Midnight Run, it's all about just like the characters talking and like reacting to each other and doing like really small little funny things that are so hilarious. And in this, it's so much more about like the filmmaker having a good time and being funny. And obviously all the people are really funny too, but it's like Edgar Wright is using this insane canvas of tricks and jokes and cues to make you laugh beyond just like De Niro being funny. And
it sometimes feels like the actors are sort of are like a paint in his palette, you know, like they're a tool in his toolbox to achieve the joke, but they're only one tool.
Yeah.
They are not the joke in and of themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just it's cool to see like that British sensibility brought with this high octane insanity.
Hey, speaking of high octane, let's talk about the final showdown.
Yeah.
And let's start with the thing that won't be as much fun to talk about. Is this movie problematic? Is this really fucking problematic at the end of this movie?
No, it's not. I don't think it is. I mean, it's not talking about any real version of the police. It's talking about movie police, from what I see. Like, this worldview is purely based in cinema. It's got, like, nothing to do with real police. It's only talking about the police from Bad Boys 2 and from Speed or Point Break.
I'm with you on that, except there's no denying that those films have an effect on the real world and the way that those institutions are perceived. And this is just like amplifying those potentially harmful or destructive messages.
Well, I remember they asked I saw like something on TMZ or something where they saw Bobcat Goldthwait and they asked him, you know, what are his thoughts on a Police Academy remake? And he's like, do you think now is the best time to be doing like irreverent police buddy drama, buddy comedies or something?
Also, do do the British police have the same problems that the American police do?
Probably.
Well, that's a really interesting question. And it's true. Like, their manners of policing are very different in the two countries. There's a much stronger emphasis on de-escalation in the UK. And you'll notice that Angel says that he hasn't even held a firearm in 2 years. Cops in the UK don't wear guns.
Right. They have to get the farmers' guns in order to have the shootout.
Do we know that for sure? What?
Yeah.
They do not wear guns. I mean, like, some types of police might, and that may have changed, but like your patrol officer will not wear a firearm.
Ben, to what you were saying, like, yes, there's guns in this movie that are fired, and it's being fired by the police. They're killing people, or they're shooting at people.
We are cheering for highly militarized police.
I suppose.
Like carrying like full armaments and assaulting a place. Like, it's, I don't know. I had trouble with it. I thought it was tough.
It is hard.
I was able to shut my brain off and just enjoy the action elements of it. Like, it is what it is. It's an action movie.
Yeah, but
we could say this about like lots of different cop movies, and I think that this one comes from like a pretty good place compared to a lot of the bullshit I've seen.
It all depends. How do you want to view something? Through what lens do you want to view something? And if you really want to, if you want to just view it as what it used to be, which is just like a kind of a fun, witty comedy romp, you can do that. If you want to view it through today's lens, you can do that.
I will say I'm bringing a lot of Edgar Wright to it, because I know like who he is, and I know that like he's a fucking guy that just loves movies, and he wanted to make a movie like the ones he's seen, so I can't really fault him for that.
The saving grace for me was that the people that they're shooting at are a bunch of lovely old British character actors carrying guns. Like, that idea is so inherently funny. The imagery associated with it is so funny that it really did soften some of my
it's all
hesitation.
A joke. It's all
I just thought it was important to address at least a little bit. I will say one more thing, one more small criticism about this is that I think Wright is a really strong visual storyteller. I don't think he's the best action director. I honestly think the scenes in this movie that are the best aren't the action scenes. It's the scenes that aren't action scenes that he directs as if they were. I wish this final sequence built in a more satisfying way. All the vignettes wind up feeling very similar, with the one exception of the major shift when they go to the grocery store. I just feel like it needed a little bit more escalation, a little bit more of like an internal narrative.
I mean, he's cribbing from other action movies, so like it's tough to like the original when you're also
you want to get the John Woo double gun dive and
he's combining all these different elements. To me though, I love this sequence and I'm captivated by it. To me, it's like sort of a precursor to like what Quentin Tarantino did with Inglourious Bastards. Like the way that the movie just like shifts gears so insanely, and like
the real one is like Django, right? Where it's like a protracted like 10-minute hyper violent action sequence.
Django is on its own it's the same terms for most of it, but like I get that same feeling that I got with Inglourious Bastards, where like you realize what they're about to do. You're like, this isn't just gonna be like quirky British, like they're gonna go full crazy and like have a shootout with these characters. Like I wasn't expecting it the first time I saw it, and like it brings you on an insane ride and you're just there for it. And the action captivated me, and I love those two guys in the action scene. They're great. They're so funny. Like, and I'm laughing. That's the thing. The action is all comedy. It's all funny. It's never going super serious. So that might be another like strike against it, in that it's being played for laughs. It's not being played for action.
It's pretty blasé about murder.
Well, no one dies either. That's the other funny thing, except for the one guy that blows up.
Except for all the victims of the.
Well, I mean, in the shootout.
Yeah.
You see them all getting booked at the end, which I always thought was a funny little thing that he did. He's like, no, it was fine. Don't worry too much. Did you guys see The World's End? I've never seen that one.
Never.
I did.
Is it good?
I think it's good. I think it's the weakest of the three, although it has some more mature thematic subtext, which I enjoy quite a bit.
I'll tell you this. Oh, sorry, Barrett. Continue.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna give a quick shout out to the ketchup gag, which I really liked. The stabbing your eye. I like that for some reason.
It's so harsh. Everything's so harsh in this movie.
Its placement in the scene is so interesting because things are getting like real for the first time between these two characters, and then boom, immediately you're out of it because he does the gag. But because of that, because it feels like a release valve for the tension of the scene, you don't realize that it's also a plant for the payoff later when he stabs him with the book. Like, it's really clever stuff.
Yeah. I will say this, if we want to talk a little bit more about Edgar Wright, I was not a fan of Baby Driver. Didn't enjoy that movie. I thought it was like kind of too far up its own ass.
I liked elements of it. I didn't like it like over I don't know. It wasn't my favorite that he's done, at least as far as all of his other films go. I do like some of the homages to other films.
Yeah, it was like the same problem Ben's talking about, where it was just a bunch of homages, but like it wasn't even funny. Like Hot Fuzz is great because it's really funny, and like Baby Driver is like, this is kind of
Baby
lame.
Driver. He's got Paul Williams in there. And,
so
let's not forget about that. Of course, I love it.
You love that Paul Williams.
Oh, just in order.
Is Bugsy Malone your favorite movie ever made?
I don't think it's my favorite movie ever made. I maybe a fan of
top 5,
top 20,
top 20. Okay,
yeah,
okay. It might be in my top 20 as well.
We love Bugsy. Can I come on? Can we do a Bugsy Malone episode?
Yeah, when we do like 1975 or whatever, when that came out.
Oh, yeah, one of his. But anyways, yeah. No, I like that Edgar. It's fun when the filmmaker is a fan of film. It's fun, you know what I mean? Like, it's fun when clearly there are homages and there is a real fanaticism there.
Yeah, he's a fanatic. Have you ever looked at his Instagram? He watches like 80 movies a month or some shit. I'm like, how do you have like a successful life and also watch that many movies? I don't understand.
He wrote a really, really nice tribute to Diana Rigg.
When
she passed away last year, and I guess he had used her in some of his later films. But yeah, no, Edgar Wright, I love that he respects those that came before, those that paved the way. And it makes me, I think, knowing that about him makes me appreciate his work more, knowing like where he's coming from as an artist and knowing that he pays his dues.
I think he still has his masterpiece coming as well.
You think so? He's got
I think he does.
He's got his Shining.
I think he's got his Inglourious Bastards to come. I don't think he's made it yet. Like I'm
sorry, are you saying right now on the record that Inglourious Bastards is Tarantino's masterpiece?
It's like his second round. Okay. It's like his next round. Like he did his initial Genius, and then he like went on to make an even better, like another version of his Genius.
It's his Layla.
I buy it. My argument for that, Nat, you know, because I agree with you, is that I think he still needs to find a way to internalize the homages and let them inform him and his style in a more subtle way.
Right.
Without like so much deliberate recreation or this kind of patchwork, mosaic style of filmmaking. Produce something more consistent, something with maybe a little bit more of an internal motion, something that tracks the waves of narrative the way we want it to, the way that's satisfying for an audience, and still has all this film literacy, but maybe is a little bit less, I don't know, cheeky about it.
Well, it begs the question, is a life spent only with film? And I don't know Edgar Wright personally. I'm just basing this off my limited knowledge of the man. But like, is a life that is like solely dedicated to film like one that's going to produce like the kinds of personal movies that you're talking about, Ben? Because obviously you have a guy like Spielberg who also was kind of the same way, yet he's managed to like make it his own and like bring his own personal shit to those movies.
Even Tarantino, who is probably the closest comparison, a guy who's basically a walking film encyclopedia, still has like has his own thing. And he lets those other things inform him, but they don't overpower him.
Yeah, it's true.
Just a quick shout out to our sponsors at stamps.com. I thought
we fucking wish. Oh my God. If I had that Stamps money.
So that's
fellas, you know, if you're having trouble in the bedroom, Blue Chew can do you a world of no. Anyways, we gotta get you guys some sponsors here.
For hymns, right? Or hymns?
For hymns,
What's the hair loss
Roman.
one?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah, for hymns, that's right.
For hymns, Me Undies.
Me Undies, yep.
Warby Parker.
If any of these brands want to contact us. All right, let's talk. We've talked about Edgar Wright. We talked about Hot Fuzz. We talked about some of the other movies. Do you like Baby Driver, Ben, by the way?
I have not seen Baby Driver.
Oh, wow.
I'd like to see it. There's the Kevin Spacey of it all, which is a real problem for me because I was a big fan of his, unlike you, Nat, prior to
He's my Darth Vader.
Are you Nat? Does Nat McGee pretends like he doesn't like Kevin Spacey before Kevin Spacey was canceled?
No, Barrett.
I can vouch that.
I always hated Kevin Spacey.
In college, he was an avowed Kevin Spacey hater. Back in the halcyon days of 2009.
When you were watching Seven, you're like, there should be Christopher Plummer.
Yeah.
R.I.P.
Yeah,
R.I.P. Christopher Plummer. And I never saw that film.
All the Money in the World.
Is it any good?
Is that what it's called? I can never remember what that movie's called. It's not one of Ridley Scott's best.
All right, fine. Well, that's saying something. Anyways, go on.
Let's talk about the legacy of Hot Fuzz, I guess. I feel like there's so much in this movie we didn't talk about, but I guess it's sort of a shotgun movie. Do we want to mention a couple more fun moments? I don't know.
I like that the mine goes off. The swan. The Swan's great.
Swan's good.
Swan getting chased.
The Swan
hero of the movie.
The Swan who is credited on IMDb as Elvis the Swan.
I have a great scene. The scene where they go back to Nick Frost's house and he's got the DVD closet. And it's basically like a gun closet. He's got this amazing collection of movies. And I also love the respect that this movie gives to Bad Boys 2, which had only come out 4 years earlier. But Bad Boys 2 is a wild ride. It's one of the most intense movies ever made, I think. So I'm glad that Edgar Wright gave it lent some authenticity. If he had said Die Hard, or if he had said another bona fide Terminator 2, something that everybody knows. But I like that he was given cred to Bad Boys 2. That felt authentic.
That scene is also one of the ones that so clearly was written for a romantic partner, and it just plays so much better with these two buddies.
Let's also not forget the cameo, which we didn't mention, by Cate Blanchett.
Ben got it in there. He said, but yes.
Did you say that? Okay, yes.
Just the idea that she would do an entire scene, a long scene,
she's cool,
with her face completely covered.
That's what makes that you love people like that who will do that shit. Someone like Cate Blanchett will, if they she must be a big Edgar Wright fan or whatever.
That's one of the most Britishy scenes in the movie, where it's I'm not Tom, you're Tom, I'm Bob, blah, 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 blah. It's just so snippy.
I just listened to when the last time I was on here, and I was making fun of dialogue between some of the characters. It was very, very funny. From Exorcist, and it was very, very funny to hear Ben rush in and defend the dialogue as I was ripping it apart. Ben, I appreciate, Ben, and your love for. I think you're much more forgiving than some people. I think you sometimes. Do you, Ben? Would you consider yourself a cynical person or no?
No, I'm not a cynical person.
But you know what? That's almost it's that Siskel Ebert thing, where Ebert would like fun shit, and Siskel would overanalyze, in a way, and it's you need that in a way.
You do. Look, I love a stagey dialogue scene. Right. Where people talk in a way that they never would in real life, but it's full of subtext and meaning and propels the story and advances your understanding of the characters. I love that shit. That's my favorite.
Barrett, do you want to do another Exorcist 3 impression while you're here?
Hey! Yeah. Okay, ready? Hey! Ready? This is Father Dyer and what the fuck is his name is? Oh, you can bleep me out. Dyer, and what was the other guy's name? It was George C. Scott or something?
Yeah, George C. Scott as Detective...
Something.
What is his name?
O'Hara or whatever.
It's a weird one.
Yeah. I'm gonna allow this in our runtime because Edgar Wright would appreciate it. We're just talking about a completely different movie than what
Hey,
we originally
the
supposed to.
Get
character's
my
name-
email. Oh,
The character's name is Kinderman. Is
What?
Kinderman, Lieutenant Kinderman.
Kinderman. Hey, Kinderman, did you get my email? I'm surprised you know what email is, you old codger. Old codger. Who taught you that? Your boyfriend? Yeah, you're the one to talk, boyfriend. What are those coattails? Talk about riding coattails, huh? Yeah, talk about riding. It's like, we get it. You guys are old friends.
If I could give you a note, your George C. Scott isn't shouting enough.
I'm not trying.
You know,
But
Ben,
anyways.
you're just a really big fan of like dialogue that's like you'd never hear in real life, and then really drives the story and themes forward.
I love those. Like, you would hope that real like homicide detectives would never be like, well, that's a bad way to go, or something, like when they show up to a crime
Oh,
scene.
dude,
they see
homicide
someone
detectives are like some of the funniest people on the planet. They have to
You
be.
say that.
No.
You say that.
If you got to read that book, Homicide: Life on the Streets, by the guy who wrote
Okay,
The Wire.
that's one book. I
No,
don't know.
man, this is a thing. This is a thing that like homicide.
thing.
You have to be funny about it, or else you go
Have to?
nuts. Yes.
What about all the other people that? What about all the other people? Like, what about people that work at a bagel shop that aren't funny about their jobs?
They're not. They're not finding
Another-
bodies on the side of the
Another
road.
Asiago, huh? Looks like it. Like, I don't know. Why are these people so serious? Like, oh, look, a dead child. Huh. Guess playtime's over or something.
Yeah, exactly.
What?
Have you ever watched CSI Miami? You gotta
How
have
can
a
you be
good
so
pun.
callous?
You gotta have a good pun when you find a body.
To bring us back to the movie that we're talking about, I like the Blanchett scene because of all of the funny double meanings about the dead bodies that they're investigating and their relationship. All that stuff's good. It's funny. It's witty. Like Nat was saying, it's very deliberate. It's very planned. That's not something somebody riffs on the day. That is like a very carefully considered and thought out joke.
Yes, it's very smart. Edgar Wright is a smart person.
Good smart cookie.
You guys see Peter Jackson?
Peter Jackson did make a cameo. I do have pizza waiting for me. Are we ending anytime soon?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We'll end,
Sorry, we got
we'll
distracted.
end now. No. Let's
Okay, let's wrap it up.
the legacy of the movie quickly.
The legacy.
All right, box office. Budget is $16 million, so not a very expensive film. It opened April 20th in 6th place to $5.8 million. Goes on to gross $23.6 million domestically, $81.7 million worldwide, which is significantly better than Shaun of the Dead. A pretty reasonable hit.
Yeah. And, you know, now Olivia Coleman's the queen on Netflix, and she's got an Oscar. So that's pretty cool part of the legacy of this movie.
Yeah. And Jim Broadbent is awesome, and the Hound's in it.
Yeah, a lot of Game of Thrones people. Okay, themes. I already touched on mine, which was the reveal that this purge of undesirables is rooted in not even a grand conspiracy, but petty grievances. And it did give me an echo of the arguably pointless wars in Iraq that could have been based on some petty grievances. We don't really know why that
I like
happened.
that. Just to do these fast, two that I noticed: institutional corruption. It's back again. And then second, one that sort of fits with the voyeurism that we were talking about before: surveillance. This is the other arguable difference between policing in the UK and policing in the US. The UK is one of the most advanced surveillance states in the world. They have more closed-circuit TVs and security cameras per capita than anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, that surveillance room that he's got was pretty high tech.
It's all over this movie. It's in the grocery store. It's with the walkie-talkies. It's with the neighborhood watch. So, you know, voyeurism coming back, this idea of surveillance, which kind of goes hand in hand with the voyeurism we saw and the surveillance we saw in Lives of Others, and this whole post 9/11 Patriot Act era where nothing's private anymore.
One last thing I wanted to mention, and then we'll let you get to your pizza there, Barrett. I wanted to bring back a little segment, which was 2007 era technology. I think I mentioned it in like the second episode, and I haven't since, but this was a nice like contemporary movie to talk about it. And that's, I'll finally mention the flip phone, but in the context of like, I don't remember when in the movie, but someone is filming something or taking a picture on a flip phone. And like watching it this time, I found it so funny that like that was ever a thing. Because like I'm so used to a smartphone taking pictures, and now it's like funny to see what ostensibly is like a Matrix flip phone with like the shittiest camera known to man. I don't know if you guys remember, but those were the worst quality images of all time.
Well, what was great was when you could take a photo with your flip phone closed.
The and it had the display.
Yeah, this display, the preview on like the little camera.
The shitty little display.
Yeah.
I liked when he's traveling the ruby crystal display on the front of his Nokia phone with the big bars descending as he loses cell service and nothing else.
Yeah, good
it's
cell
like
phones
a digital
in this
watch.
movie. This is a good one to. I won't mention cell phones again because it's such an obvious hit, but I think this movie did a great job of showcasing the kind of like transitory shittiness of cellular telephones at the time. All right, so Barrett, thank you so much for joining us again. We'll have you back again soon.
Yeah, I'll come back anytime.
Take a look at our schedule and we'll
Bugsy
pick
Malone
another movie.
You give a little love and it all comes back to you.
La 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 la. Such a great song. I go back to that jam a lot. Guys and gals, all of our listeners, please once again subscribe to the Instagram and the Twitter and tell your friends about the show.
Patreon, Cash App, Clubhouse, everything.
Yeah, Barrett's a big Clubhouse celeb these days, so check him out on Clubhouse.
Oh yeah. Anyways, but yeah.
If you liked his Exorcist impression,
which you didn't, thank you. Thanks for having me on, guys. Ben, Nat, a lot of fun.
Is there anything else you wanted to tell our listeners about Barrett? Like where they can, any cool stuff you've been working on?
Got a few. I'm working on a few anime series that I did. That'll be coming out. I'll post stuff on my website and on social media. Barrett Leddy on all social media.
So next week we're doing Grindhouse, another homage movie. I don't know if it's available streaming anywhere. Just check justwatch.com. You can find it. And yeah, I'm excited to talk about it. It's a big one. Of stuff. And Edgar Wright's in there.
I was going to say Edgar Wright directed one of the ads between the two films.
Great transition. Thanks
to Andy Gagnon for our theme song and Jackie Salzman for our artwork.
Thank you, guys.
Back to the movies. Back to the movies. Nat and Ben.
Kind of like that
to the movie.
As an alternate theme song.
You like that?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, there you go.
We can work on it a little bit, but I like the initial.
Thanks.
Thank you again, Barrett. So for Back to the Movies, has been Nat.
And I'm Ben. And we'll see you next week when we go back to the movies.
Barrett, I can't believe you wouldn't eat ice cream by yourself.
I'm not doing it. It's so sad.
I'm trying to think what my sad thing is.
I'm podcasting from the land of Ben and Jerry's right
That's
now.
fine, Vermont, but that's fine. Jerry spoke at my college graduation.
Oh, wow. His son was a year older than me in high school.
Really?
We were on Scholars Bowl together.